on this computer. Okay. So I've started recording. You probably got a notification that I started recording. And what we're going to do today is I've got two goals today, which is well, hopefully you've got the videos from last week that I sent out, and hopefully you had the chance to watch them.
Listen to your body.
All right. So, first off, I apologize to that for missing last week and having to hold these over Zoom. As you've heard, I've been having medical issues, and it's just safer at the moment to be home right now. But otherwise I'm feeling fine, so I'm resumed teaching. And since the last week is review anyway, it works out that it's this way. The main thing I have to go over is hopefully you were able to turn in your progress report last night. If you haven't, this is a gentle reminder that you need to turn in your progress report. If you're trying to communicate me last week about the final project, I missed it because I was in the hospital, and then that was not fun. So let's see. But yes, try to get, we understand if you aren't able to get to what you envisioned when you did your proposal a few weeks ago. Again, you want to turn in what you have, you want to do what you have to do. You turn in what you have, explain where you were able to get to, but what blocked you. So let me go ahead and talk about what you're expected to turn in, okay? What you're expected to turn in for the final project. Oh, it changed the way this looks. Okay, share screen. Okay, that's cool. So here we go. You can see my screen now, hopefully. So progress report is, yep. I mean, that's fairly straightforward. If you haven't turned it in, gentle reminder, please turn it in. Final project. Okay. What you submit here is a link to your GitHub repo where your code is hosted. That's what I want to see. So when you go into student view, right, it's going to, you submission type, I should really restrict it so that it is a URL. In fact, I'll go and do that right now. Leave student view. And basically everything you need should be on GitHub or linked to from GitHub. I'll explain that in a second, but let me go ahead and edit that. So, restrict file uploads. There we go. There we go. Save. And that saves me from having to download like 1.5 million video files, hopefully. All right. So what you want to do is submit a link to the GitHub repo where your code is hosted. Make sure that it is public and not private. If it is private, you will temporarily receive a 0 because that is the quickest means I have of communicating with you that something is wrong. An email won't get what you might miss, but a 0 you won't, amazingly, for some reason. And as soon as you unprivate it, I'll be able to take a look at that. You must also, so you submit a link, and part of that is a 1 to 2 minute video detailing your project. What you should do is that you should upload it to Canvas or link to it elsewhere. Okay. Recordings. Okay, so there we go. Guess I had it covered there. This file, this can be uploaded to Canvas or linked elsewhere as long as it's obvious and easy for us to find. Include the URL of your video in your submission to Canvas. And you can just add that into like, it can be either on your README file on GitHub or or it can be in the comments that for the assignment itself. Your video is the main way I'll be grading your assignment. So that's because I can't really download and run a whole lot of code like that. So your video should be a walkthrough, slides, screenshots, voiceover, and or live action. I don't really care how you demonstrate it. Just for the love of all that is holy, please do not demo your, show me your program by taking a cell phone video of your computer screen. That makes me very sad. I will go over how to do a recording in just a bit so that you don't have to do that. But a cell phone video recording of your computer screen is just not fun for anybody. If the only time, when would a cell phone video be allowed? Cell phone video would be allowed if like you built something physical, right? And you want to show that. All right. If you need to split it up into multiple videos, that's fine. But the main thing is that the total watch time that I'm going to be spending on your video is around 3 minutes. Do not, please limit yourself to 3 minutes. I know that sounds hard, and it is hard, but please do your best to limit it to 3 minutes. The reason being is that I have so many of these videos to get through, right? So the due date is Monday. I'll try to go through, maybe I'll see if I can't go through as many as possible on Monday that are turned in before the deadline. Okay. But for the most part, that means I usually spend all day Tuesday, okay, going through these, so that I can pick out the best project. Now, remember, we have a final exam, and the way we have a final exam in this class, and the incentive to have to go above and beyond for this project is that the best project from every section is exempt from the final. The best project is exempt from the final from every section. Occasionally, if I haven't been able to choose, I might say, oh, there's these two people, these two different projects. It's not based off the number of people. It's based off the number of it's based off the project. So, okay. So that's why I need to get these done Tuesday, because the exam will be on the Thursday that immediately follows that. I'll send an announcement with the final date and location out shortly. But basically you have Tuesday. A grade Tuesday, so that I can let the people know as soon as possible, so they don't have to spend all Wednesday studying. Okay, make sense? All right, so going back to the video can be basically, it's very loose. You don't have to show me your code. I'm much more interested in the final project, right? If you have more to say, include it in a README file and tell me to go and look at it. Okay. But again, keep it limited to 3 minutes, because I've had people submit 15-minute videos. I don't deduct points for those. I just generally, have to skip around the video and I don't get the, and I don't watch all your 15 minutes. And it takes a while, even when I speed up all these videos to 2 times speed. Okay. So anyway. Where you can put these videos, you can put them on Dropbox, you can put them on a Google Drive, you can put them on your OneDrive from Temple, you can put them on YouTube, right? YouTube is probably the easiest way, because it's always accessible and there's no permission issues there, as long as it's public or unlisted. If you want me to see it, but you don't want it but you want it to be semi-private, you upload it and select unlisted. That just simply means that that people can't find the video by searching for it, but you can share it. Okay. So your video should be a walkthrough, slides, screenshots, voiceover, live action. Your video should somehow include your project's title, your name and year, and any other details you'd like to convey to the viewers. Your video should be a general overview of the final product, include anything else you want to say, including the difficulties, which that's what I'm very interested in, that you faced or overcame, what you've learned, also very interested in that, what you enjoyed, etc. in a README file. It's all good, that kind of stuff. So if you can get that into the video, great, but I understand if you can't. We're interested in the challenges you encountered in coding, if you found a way to overcome them and go around them. We understand that that you may have not been able to do what you set out to do initially. We are interested in the journey, not the destination. And the guidelines for an A is that it amuses me for a minute, amazes me, make a positive impact on the world, no matter how small. I am a very amused people. I'm a very amused person. I'm not sure why I pluralize that. I'm extremely easy to amuse. Again, if you do what a lot of what you set out to do, you'll most likely earn an A. It's very rare that a project gets below a 80. And that's only if it's kind of bare bones and stuff. the vast majority of the time that somebody scores like a failing grade on the final project is because they turned it in late, right? We have an extremely strict late penalty. This is this is the one hard deadline I have in the entire class. The one hard deadline. Everything else you've learned, I'm very flexible with. This one I am inflexible because it is the last day of class, right? It is the last day of class, so it's inflexible. April 29th. So the late penalty is it's 1/10 of a point per minute late. That means if you turn it in an hour late, 6 points off. Okay, so 6 points off is still an A, but still that's not a fun thing for it's just not gonna work. I had a student last semester who lost a number of points for their project because they turned it in at like 4 or 5 a.m. So don't be that person, right? And yeah, and if there's like a technical difficulty with Canvas, but you've uploaded it to GitHub all right, I can look at GitHub and the file stamps that way. So don't panic about it if Canvas decides to really hate you and only you at that moment. Okay. So any questions before I move on to show you how to record videos? All right. Very briefly, I suggest one of 2 ways to go about it. Well, one of 3 ways. One, I think most operating systems do include some basic screen capture software in them these days, but that requires you to learn a new program. So method number 1 for sharing your screen or doing a recording of your project. You're in it, Zoom. You're in Zoom. Okay, very simple, right? Open up, the way it works is that you open up Zoom onto your own computer, right? Try setting up your own new meeting and just not meet with anybody. And then from there, you should be able to find the option to share, to record to record a video on Zoom. What you do is you just simply share your screen, even though there's nobody else there, and you record. You can find a Google guide on how to do that. It's very trivial, but it's very easy and it's very straightforward. The only downside is that, of course, that your video will need to spend some time rendering. It's all, please do your best to explain it all in one video. If you have additional things you can't fit into 3 minutes, include it in your README document, because I can read very fast. I can read a lot faster than I can read actually rather fast. So if you have anything extra to say beyond the 3 minutes, include it in a README file. Okay, and I will read it. Let's see. So again, going with recordings, I'm doing that right now for Zoom. I'm recording on my computer. I'm recording on my computer. I've got right. Let me just stop sharing for a second, right? So you see this window right now that you're in, with all our beautiful faces, right? Below that is the bottom bar. There's going to be when you are the host of your own meeting, meaning you are the one hitting the new meeting button rather than the join meeting. There will be a nice big green share screen button, right? Which you probably should be able to see that now. And I can even enable people to share their screen by default to avoid Zoom bombing, which was an issue like during those first semesters. It's restricted to me, but what we do is you just hit the share screen button and you can share your entire screen. Next to that should be the record button, and you can just simply start or stop a recording that way. Very straightforward, very easy. The other way I would recommend, which is a bit more flexible, in my opinion, and better to learn, is to use OBS. If you've seen anybody streaming on Twitch or YouTube, they're almost certainly using OBS. And if they're not using OBS, they're using a fork of it, meaning a spin-off program. OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, is available for Mac, Windows, Linux. It works on all of them. It's very good. And it's fairly straightforward to get up and running, even if it does look little intimidating at first. Right, I'll boot it up on my end to kind of show you. even though I won't be able to show you the video because I'm recording video right now. And basically I can't show you two things at once. So over here, right, what you do is that, let me go ahead and trash this, right? It should detect your, so the way this works is that this should detect your audio, you know, your microphone and desktop audio, which is the stuff that comes out of your speaker automatically. There's buttons over here. This one is the one that says start recording. Here's the one you want. Streaming is one if you want to live stream. Everything else doesn't really matter over there. It will run a setup wizard the first time you run it, so it's not going to be so intimidating. If you lose it, then just simply go to Tools, Auto Configuration Wizard, and this will do this is what's going to pop up the first time. Optimize for streaming, recording is secondary. Optimize just for recording. I will not be streaming. That's you. And then it'll figure out based on your computer specs what's the best settings. What you'll have over here is something called a scene, which are different things you can kind of change between very easily. We only need one. We just simply hit add source. And we can say display capture. Add new display capture. And that's whatever you want to name it if you have multiple monitors, but you don't most likely. So you hit that. And then it will ask you to display if you have multiple monitors, it will ask you which one you want. Capture method automatic, very easily, right? Just simply go with auto. It's a smart program. Capture cursor, that's just simply if you want to show your mouse on screen or not. And that is it. This is it. This is what and this gives you a live preview of what you would be recording, right? Over here, you can see in that tiny little window now, basically it's kind of one of those recursive pictures. Okay. If you want to also include a web camera, which I can't do because I'm already using my web camera. Actually, let me just go ahead and turn off my camera for a second. I can show you. So what you do is you go to camera, video capture device, add new one, and there I am. And then it detects your web camera. You say, okay, you shrink the windows however you want. The one on top of this one goes on top. So the video capture device is below the display capture. It's below it. So this is on top now. And so we can see my video on top. This is the entire screen. If it goes off the screen, it warns you and says, hey, you won't be able to see this. Oh, there's my face is gone. Oh no. And there I'm back again. Okay. So if you can't see this, if you can't get a hold of your web camera, even though you have one, it's because something else is using it. Okay, so and then you just hit start recording. That's it. Generally, it's advisable to kind of put if you want to record your face in this, which you do not need to do. You do not need to do that. You're allowed to be shy. Then it's advisable to kind of just put it like here or here, you know, somewhere in a corner. Oh, I forgot to share the screen. Oh, darn it. Okay. All right, let me quickly go through that again. All right, so let me go through this again then. Sorry. I wish somebody had spoken up sooner. All right, let me repeat that very quickly. Okay, so what we're going to do is that I'm going to, so you go to OBS, you can get OBS, right? You can download it for Windows, whatever, right? First time you boot up OBS, right, you'll get a dialog that looks like this. Hold on, it's gotta boot up again. There we go. Let me go ahead and remove this so I can get it back to, yep, display capture, remove that, remove this. First time you boot up, you'll get a dialog that looks like this, an auto configuration wizard. Very easy. Just simply select you'll be recording unless you want to live stream stuff. If you somehow like miss that or click out of it, you can get it again by going to Tools, going to Auto Configuration Wizard. Okay, it'll set up everything automatically. Scenes are different ways you might want to display different sources. You only need one because you're only going to be recording one thing. You're going to be recording your screen. You hit the plus button over here under sources, hit display capture. Create new display capture. Select the appropriate monitor if you have more than one. I have more than one, so I'm going to share my primary monitor. I hit OK, and now it's one of those weird recursive things that I was talking about. See? Here we go. It's recording this. It is basically recording the screen. This is a live preview of that. If you want to record, you hit start recording. It should automatically detect your mic, and you should be able to see that your mic is working based off of the fun bouncing line, right? So if you want your face in there as well, and you have a web camera, you just simply hit the plus button again. You hit video capture device, select new capture device, and there I am. Hit OK, drag this, and you can drag this wherever. This needs to be on top for it to be on top of the display. If you drag and drop it below, it goes below, and so it doesn't appear on top of it anymore. You can see the outline for it there, but it's below the window. We go and move it on top again, like that. Drag and drop. There I am. Also, it gives you what it calls a canvas, which is what basically which is most likely going to be 1080p. And basically, if it's outside the canvas, you won't be able to see it. It'll warn you with these nice jagged lines. Bandicam is perfectly fine. You can use whatever you want. I just figured I'd show you. To mention Zoom because it's easy. Because this is the so to speak industrial the strength option. You can do it. This is what Twitch streamers use. Okay, and you've seen how some of those people are on Twitch. If they can figure it out, certainly you can. So, but the point being here is that it is a very straightforward source. It's very well documented, very easy. If you want to use something like Bandicam, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead. I'm not expecting anything like I'm not expecting like a super edited video with splits and jumps and stuff. Nothing like that. All I want is basically an earnest effort. Okay, and an easy to watch recording just showing me what your final product is. Okay. Let me go ahead and just simply turn my camera back on now, right? Think of it like a demo, except I'm interested in what in what you wrote rather than the code. That's why I went through it. OBS isn't too complicated, and that's why I also mentioned Zoom. Zoom is also super uncomplicated. But like I said, some people sometimes need an excuse to learn something they've been wanting to learn, which is part of the reason we do the final project. Okay. Any questions? All right. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started on reviewing for the final. Because of the video I sent out on last Thursday, I will do my best to adhere to what that video said, which is that you will have a number of questions, probably 4 or 5, and you have to do 4 or 5 questions, and you'll be able to choose from a selection of them. Okay, and maybe some shorter questions that you have to do. When is the date for the final? The date for the final is, let's go ahead and find it. I find it out the same exact way you all find it out. So let's go and find it out together. Final exam, Temple University. There is the exam schedule, May 1st to May 7th, spring 2024. So even though we are a 4 credit hour course, this is where the confusion comes in. We are 4 credit hour, but we have a 3 hours for a lecture, 1 hour for lab. So we look under the 3-hour meeting time. So 2 to 3:20, Tuesday, Thursday, 5 to 1 to 3 o'clock. That means here we are, and here is the final. 1 to 3 o'clock. There is a lab on Friday, the 26th, and Monday, the 29th. Lab will run on the 26th and the 29th. But the 29th is the last day of class. After that, all that is left is finals. The credits, I can be either a markdown or a text file. It will also be a bit of a busy day for me because I have my data structures exam immediately after that one. Let's go ahead. I'd say a single cheat sheet front and back. Yes, we have the exam in the classroom where we would normally meet. Not your lab, but in your class. I will send out an email with all the details. Okay, that's on my to-do list after for tomorrow because tonight is the second night of Seder for Pesach. So that's on my to-do list is to handle final exam coordination tomorrow. Okay. Okay. If you important to note, your all day and evening classes will have final exams in the schedule below. Final exams may not be scheduled on study days or in the last week of classes. So if a professor is giving you the final week, their final exam this week, you really should let the dean know about that. It is not in lab. It is in the regular classroom. Okay, regular classroom, the giant lecture hall. I will send that out in the email. I'll send a when, where, and what you're allowed to bring, which is a cheat sheet. All right. Other important detail. If you haven't, so most freshmen don't know this going in, and because there were a bunch of paragraphs before this, instructors are encouraged to work out individual accommodations with students who have more than 2 exams on one day. In other words, if you have more than 2 exams, you have 3 exams scheduled on a single day somehow. You should let your professors know that because that's not good. We don't want you to take more than 2. One would be ideal. 2, it's not fun, but it's very doable. 3 is we consider at that point no. So at that point, one of your professors needs to move and let you take your final exam under an alternative arrangement. Okay. Part of the reason we are doing this, we switched to electronics. Sorry, from electronic to the written portion, by the way, is because the final was the most was where I would catch most of the cheaters. Because I have traps set up that basically that if you try to cheat, I can very easily tell, and it's worked every single time. I've gotten confessions every single time. There have been no false confessions, or false and I only really charge when I'm like 100% sure. Okay, and I'm more than happy to reveal that what that was after the final exam on Discord. Okay, but the way this works is that on paper, I don't suspect there's going to be any of that issues. Okay. So let's see. So you'll get your final project grade, the final exam grade. I plan on doing the Runestone integration as soon as possible. The due date for all the stuff on Runestone is technically the 29th, but you have until I arbitrarily decide to run the grader for the last time. So I'll run it this week, upload the grade so you can see where you are before the final. And then sometime before the final grades are due, I'll run it again one last time. So as long as it's been turned in before that, I'll grade it. So the 29th, so it will be graded for a final time sometime between the 2nd and an unknown date by that. So you probably don't want to risk it past, let's say, the weekend. Okay. So Runestone, though, if you get it in, you'll get credit for it. Okay. Similarly, if you turn stuff in, you can arrange a demo with me. Because I'm out of the office right now, I'll arrange to do some office hours on Zoom, maybe this Wednesday evening. Okay. Any other questions about the logistics of the final rather than the actual questions and actual content, which is what I'm going to do next? The exam will look a lot like exam 2. Let's see. So questions on the exam will include, as I've mentioned, you will have a regex question, a regular expression question. If you didn't watch the videos last week, this is part of the reason why I do this whole, 7 questions. Typically it's like something like 7 questions, choose 5. And it might be something more along the lines of, 7 questions, choose 5. I'll make the question shorter. And then that will be maybe worth, let's say, 15 points apiece. So let's see. So this is one, I'm spitballing here. I haven't fully decided yet because I'm still transitioning the paper. 15 times 5 would be 75 points about, right? Yeah, sounds about right. Then I guess the remaining 25 would probably be some shorter questions. And part of the reason I do this 7 choose 5 is so that I can guarantee you, if you're missing class points from the in-class code, you find those on the lectures I did those, such as the Blame the Pope lab. There, so if it wasn't one of the things you turn in, then it's on Runestone. Okay. Okay, so anyway, going back to this. Part of the reason I do the whole 7 questions, choose 5 or something similar to that, right, is because I like to teach regular expressions, but I also know it's a semester where learning new things, especially like regular expressions, can be really difficult. So this is one of those things where I say, if you spend 2 hours learning regular expressions, not only is it going to help you in basically just kind of all programming forever and ever, okay? It's a very easy, pretty much easy. It's like a super easy free question on the test. Super easy to do. Regular expression questions are always like, oh, here's a file, replace all the things in the file. And I want to remove things from the file, such as social security numbers or whatnot. So, and I think I went over that in video, but we'll go over a problem like that today and tomorrow. Okay, today or tomorrow. Besides that, you'll also get a file reading question, like the who, what, or who, won, why question in the video file I released on Thursday. Okay, that's always there. So a problem like the nested loops problem on exam 2, where you're given a list of lists, and it's basically maybe find the biggest word in each list, or maybe it's sum up the biggest number in each from each list, right? Something where it's a list of lists. So nested loop slash lists. Okay. Normally I would include a turtle question. Don't know if I'll be able to do so. Because the way the turtle question worked on the final exam when it was electronic is that there was code for you to download. Okay. And then you'd run it, and I had questions about what the code did. And the turtle code it's not nearly as doable on paper because you would run it and you'd tweak values in my very obfuscated code. Like I'd have my variables all translated to different foreign languages, levels of obfuscated. Like Japanese and Hungarian, and so things that are not necessarily easy hints for people. Okay. So I don't know if I'll have a turtle question, but that's generally a topic there. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else is on the final. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. Remind me to share it again. I'm just going to take a look at what I have just to make sure. Do I have a final? Yeah, I have a paper backup of when I gave it out electronically, I believe. So I'm just going to take a quick look at that. Oh, yeah. Okay. me go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, yeah, and you'll definitely have a Monte Carlo question. As I've mentioned before, I've mentioned this, maybe not for this class, but this question, you'll be simulating. This is a simulation of game. The game is literally designed for toddlers to learn them how to take turns, so the rules aren't complicated, but it's still a very good program, I find. It's very good. It's one of my favorite questions to ask. Okay, and I know the video. I'll review that video to make sure that I match up and align with these questions. So with that, let's go over some of the practice problems I've curated and created for this exam. Okay, so let's go ahead and desktop and final review. Yeah, let's go ahead and overwrite that old final review anyway. We don't need it. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at our some of the questions we have now. Typically what I'll do is, if you haven't noticed this on the exams yet, the one on the back has been getting progressively longer and longer. Just with the kind of hints that I have, basically because you're allowed notes. These are kind of an idea of the notes that I might include in mine, just general hints. So if you forget your notes, there's a few over here that I consider highly useful, such as what you need to do for regular expressions if you're doing the regular expression problem. And then here is the read file, how to write a file. And then, right, okay. So, yep. So, here's a good example of a file reading question. I believe I went over this on the video on Thursday. Did people watch the video I sent out on Thursday? It's okay if you haven't, because there's 100 people in this class, and over 100, and less than half of that is actually attending this Zoom session, which is a bit, not great. So, did people watch it or plan to watch it? Hopefully you do plan to watch it if you haven't. Okay. So here's another good question. Below average, given a list of numbers, return a new list of all the numbers from the list that are less than than the average of the list. XOR, one of my favorites. Sum of threes, this is a good one for those nested lists. Now, like exam 2, I will have rubrics attached to each of these questions. These don't have rubrics here, but like exam 2, there will be rubrics attached to each of the questions. Do people find the rubrics, being able to look at those? Do they find those helpful for the questions? Good, because they're meant to be helpful to you and to me. I find that, it's a time, we have the kind of time constrained thing. And a lot of this will have rubrics. And again, sometimes they'll be a bit abstract, like this one. But it can be, but we'll get to it. But but a lot of the questions here are things that I plan on, there's a few questions here in the Monte Carlo section that I've asked before, but also stuff that I haven't, and I've asked on final exams in past. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Write a function called makeUsername that generates a username for a given name and suffix, as demonstrated by the examples below. You can assume that the format of the name is either first name, last name, or first name, middle name, last name. Okay, because names are complicated. We relieve a lot of falsehoods about names as programmers, such as people have exactly one full name they go by. People's names are only written in ASCII. People's names are case sensitive. They're case insensitive. People's names are globally unique. No. People have last names. People's first names and last names are different. Okay. Okay, people's names are assigned at birth. Okay, maybe close to birth. Okay, maybe within a year or so. 5 years. You're kidding me, right? So it's a very amusing list about issues with that crop up with names. Okay, so that's why I specify that this is the format of a name. So here's examples. If the argument is, so here we have name and N. If the argument is Andrew Rosen and 12, it becomes AR12. If it's Alan Turing and 5, it becomes AT5. If it's Andrew Benjamin Rosen and 3, it becomes ABR3. And if it's Andrew Benjamin Rosen and 104, it becomes ABR104. Hopefully that clarifies how that kind of clarifies the expectation, which is you take the first letter of each part of the name, okay, and then and you take the first letter of each part of the name and concatenate those together with the number. So here, because my handwriting, especially on if I was typing on writing on screen, is terrible, I'll type it out. Okay. Okay, so name, make username. Excellent. So first thing we need to do is we're given a string. All right. So let's go ahead and, well, let's see. What did it say? Did it say return? Yep, it says return. Oh, no, it doesn't say return. It says generate. In general, though, I want you to return. I try to specify returning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say username is equal to whatever. And I always like to do this when I'm starting out, just saying this is what my answer is going to be. And I'm going to be returning my answer. And then I put my code in between that sandwich. Okay. Or in between the slices of bread to make my sandwich, so to speak. Okay. So next thing is we need to get the initials, right? So what we have to do is initials. We'll go ahead and get the initials. And then the username will be the eventual when we're done, right? What's going to happen? We're going to combine the initials with the number in order to make the username. Make sense to everybody? So there so notice how I'm kind of problem solving. It's easier to do like this on a computer when we're being able to insert things in the middle, but kind of like think through that process. Oh, here's the parts I need, and here I can combine them like that, and you can just easily write at the bottom of the page, right? Or you can scratch it all out, erase, ask for a new sheet of paper. It's fine. Okay. So so now what we need to do is I've got to get the first letter of each part of the name. Okay. So each part of the name is a word, and we know how to tackle words. We split when we've got a string of words and we want to do each word individually, we split it. Okay, and by default, this splits on white space, but if you want to be extra cautious, you can say split on a space, please. Split on a space, please. That's actually surprisingly hard. All right. And then what we need to do is get the first letter from each part of that. For part, so for P in parts, right? I sometimes do this for part in parts, but that's my preference, but some people don't really like that. I'll do it anyway. So for each part of the name, what are we going to do? We're going to get the first letter of it, and we're going to add its initials. So first letter equal to part 0. And then initials plus equals first letter, which is the same. Once again, that's the same as saying initials is equal to initials plus first letter, right? And can I do this all in one line? I sure can. But again, just trying to make it as easy to read and as easy to understand for pedagogical reasons as possible. A lot of stuff I teach, we can be done more efficiently, but for pedagogical reasons, for the reasons of teaching and understanding, we display it this way in ways that can be interpreted, that can be brought over and done in other languages. So this is a file reading from the question, file reading question from the other final. I believe I went over it in the other video. Would people like me to go over it here again? Okay, so I figured. Yep, if you get the chance to watch those videos I send out, please do so. Especially the one on regular expressions. That's my Florida man video. Do I need to make the user? Oh, yes. So somebody pointed out something. Cora mentioned, do I need to make the username letters lowercase? Yes, I do. And how do we do that? We can do it over here by saying dot lower to convert it to lowercase. Or I can do it over here to convert to lowercase. Or I can do it initials is equal to initials dot lower over here. Anywhere is good for that, pretty much. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do this question. So this one's from a previous final. This was my file reading question from another final. Suppose you're playing a game which keeps track of each player's scores and outputs it to a file. The file is made up of multiple lines. Each line contains a player's name followed by a comma, followed by that player's score. So I'll often have like the verbose description, and then I'll have an example of what that would look like in practice. Write a function that takes in a file name as an argument and returns or prints which player had the highest score and what it was. So in the example below, your function should report that Mario was the winner with 97. Reporting Mario 97 works perfectly fine for me. And here's the file, which basically says, which is a bunch of Mario characters. So Mario character, comma, and then a score number. Okay. Let's go ahead and grab that all. And we will just simply comment out this kind of example. And Mario 97. Okay, who won why? So generally the way this works with these kind of problems is that the first thing you need to do is in the rubric is open up the file and read the file. You'll get, even if you have trouble with with actually doing what you need to do in the file, as long as you show me you've learned how to open up and read a file, you'll get credit. And credit on final exam is definitely something you want. So how do we do that? Remember, it always works like this. So the file is equal to open file name, right? And notice that it's just file name over here. Is exam 2 graded? I have no idea. I told my TAs to grade it. Email your TA. Your TA is supposed to be grading your exam. Like I said, I was sick, and so I had planned to get together last week with the TAs to grade the exam, and I could not. So I apologize for that significant delay. It depends on from section to section. Some people had their exam graded because their section's TA was very prompt about it. So anyway, how do I read a file? You say the file, you create a file object or something that represents that file by saying the file, open, and then R for reading, right? This is a string, this is a variable. Okay, and then we've done this multiple times. We have multiple ways of doing this. You can either read the entire file in one chunk, the file.read, but that's not very useful. Yes, okay. Instead, what we want to do is read lines or a for loop. I personally prefer read lines. I can simply say lines is equal to the file.readlines, and I can store each of the lines as a string in a list. Very useful format for that. That's opening the file, which is going to be worth at somewhere around 2 points. This line was worth somewhere around 2 points. That's easy enough, right? And we know we've got some answer we need to return, but we can figure that out later. So now we need to iterate through these lines. For line in lines. Again, there I go with the singular and pluralization. It's what I prefer to do. Okay. So what I do is I say, okay, I need to process each line. Each line is a string. Right? And it's always name, comma. Okay. So I can do one of two things. I can do parts is equal to line dot split. Right? I can do that just right there, like that. Okay. But I can also, and then I could basically, then I can get the name of the player by saying parts 0, and I can get the score by saying parts 1. Okay. But I can also be a bit trickier. Specific, oh wait, and I missed something, right? What do I have to do? I have to, because this is separated by commas, right? Because it's something separated by commas, I want to split it on commas. Okay, there we go. So got those parts. What do I need to do? Parts line.split name score. So what do? I can be a bit clever. I could instead, this is perfectly viable. I can also do this in sort of in one line by saying name, comma, score. Python is nice like that. It's very flexible like that. And then the other thing we need to make sure is that score is considered to be an integer. Okay, so what we do now is now we need to figure out who had the highest score. Okay, let's keep track of it. So in order to do that, we need to keep track of that, right? We would simply compare the score to the highest score I've seen so far. So let's create a new variable. Highest score. And winner is equal to, okay. So for each line, what we do is we get the name, we get the score. We can convert it. We can say, okay, if score is greater than the highest score, then that person's our new winner. So what should we do? We say, oh, the highest score is equal to the new score. And we say the winner is equal to the name of that character. This is why we converted it into an integer, by the way. That's why we converted it to an integer. Okay. And now all you have to do is we can return name, we can return winner highest score. Very straightforward once you see it. Yeah, there's almost certainly going to be a question or two about lists on there besides the nested list program question, right? So below average, I think is a really good example of one I might ask on a final exam. I like it, right? Below average, given a list of numbers, return a new list of all numbers that are below than the average. So I'm going to go with a very easy example, okay? Very easy example because I neglected to put examples here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that would mean. If numbers happen to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the average of this number is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 divided by 5, which is 15. right? Divided by 5 is 3. So what are the numbers in here that are less than 3? 1 and 2, right? If I gave you, let's say, let's go ahead and do it 1, 10, 100, right? What's the average of that? Well, it's 111 divided by 3, right? Which is a number greater than 10, but less than 50. It's like somewhere in the 30s, right? So what numbers are less than 30? This would give me 1 and 10, right? And what about this one? An even more explicit example, let's go with -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, right? Blah, blah, blah. And -5 and positive 100, right? Here, I'm just working, I'm not even going to bother calculating the average. I'm just going to use some of this. Oh, question above. How will it know that index of the name? Are you referring to line 44, Abrar? The answer is that it knows which one, that this one comes first. It knows this is index 0 because it comes first. And it knows that this is index 1 because this comes second. Right? It figures things out positionally. And we can only do this. We can only do this for this one because we know when we do a split, we're going to have 2 things. Up here in this previous problem, when we split, we could have 2 or 3 things. So it was not as useful. It was a good question. Okay. So over here, we're not even going to bother computing the average. We have 5 numbers over here, some 5 small negative numbers. And then we're going to add 100 to that. That's going to result in a positive number divided by another positive number, right? 6. So a positive number divided by 6 is going to be greater than 0. So the average is going to be greater than 0. So we just want to, so we need to get all the numbers that are less than 0, which in this case would be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Isn't it amazing how you can sometimes do math without actually ever touching math at all? It's fun without doing any arithmetic. All right, so what we need to do is we need to calculate the average, right? The average is equal to something, right? The average is going to be equal to the total sum, right? The total divided by how many numbers there were, right? Right? So we need to calculate the average first before we do anything else, okay? So this is a unique one because if you think about this for a second, oh my, I have to go through this list twice. Once to figure out the average, once to find out the average, and once to find out which numbers are less than the average. I can't do it without going through it twice unless you use the sum operation, but let's ignore that for a second. Again, I'm doing this for assuming that like this is for the sake of art. I'm doing this for pedagogical reasons. Some problems you realize, oh, can't do that. So let's go ahead and just compute the average. I know how to do that. And then I can work on the other part. So for num in numbers, what are we going to do? We need the total is equal to 0. We do a running sum. And we say for each of the numbers, total plus equals numbers. So we just simply do a running sum like we've been doing since like the first couple of weeks, since we've been doing like week 3 or 4. Right? And then we've done the average a bunch of times. We did a lot that during week 4. Average is equal to the total number of the running sum divided by length of numbers. Right? You could alternatively calculate the average like this without a for loop and just knowing it's built into Python using sum of numbers divided by the length of numbers. The sum of what's in here divided by how many things there are. You can figure that. Either way works. On an exam, though, you might forget that sum exists. Okay. Now what do we do? So now we have to go through this list again and find all the numbers that are less than, that are below average. And I'm just simply going to be simple about this. I'm going to call it the output. So for num in numbers, yes, you can go through it again. Nothing's stopping you. For num in numbers, what are we going to do? We are going to ask if the number is less than the average, add it to the output. And how do we do that? We use append to add it to the end of a list. Output.append, and we append that number. Then we return the output. This is also not the only way to do it, by the way. As we've learned with Python, it's very flexible. This is the preferred way to do it, but you can also do it this other non-preferred way, which is you can say output is equal to output, and you can do concatenation just like you do a string. Only instead of quotation marks, because it's a list, we turn the thing we're adding into a list, and then it can combine the two things. That's the only difference there. But I don't prefer using that way. I find that way a bit to be doing output.append I much prefer. Because it corresponds to what you'll need to do in 2168 a lot, which is .add to the end of the list. Okay, next, what are we going to do? Let's see. Yes, I love this question. Mainly because it's one of those demonstrations of the more you think about it, the shorter it gets. The answer, the shorter this answer gets, the more you think about it. I've asked this on the, and by the way, I think I have either asked this on the final exam. I think I've asked this on the final exam once a long time ago, and I liked the question so much, I took it out and I put it in a practice problem. So we learned about and or. There's a third operation called XOR. Not making this up, it's called XOR. In other programming languages, it has a symbol built in. I just like this one, but in Python, not so much. I mean, it does, probably. It does, but it's weird. Okay. XOR. So OR returns true if either A or B is true or both are true, right? Exclusive OR is one of those, so that's an inclusive OR, our normal OR. XOR stands for exclusive OR. It's the kind of thing where you give somebody options, but we can only choose one. Do you want to stay home or do you want to go to the movies? Okay. Do you want to go to the amusement park or do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to study computer science or do you want to study biology? Right? Those are typically like, an and or. The last one's not so much. The last one's more of an or because I guess they're double majoring. But the point being, XOR is one where basically, right, with and an or, right, you have basically a truth table, what it comes down to, right? You have A, B, A, and so you have A, B, A, and B, A, or B, A, XOR B. So true, true, false, false. True, false, false, true. Let's match it up. Okay. So A and B, in order for things to be true, for A and B, both things have to be true. Otherwise, it's going to be false. No, I don't want a screenshot. Why does it keep thinking I want a screenshot? What hit button am I hitting? Okay. False. And if they're both false, they're false. For Or if one thing is true, if at least one thing is true, they're both true. Right? It's only false if both things are false. With XOR, you return true if only A is true or only B is true, but false if both are true or both are false. So you can only return true if one is true. So true and true gives us false. True, false gives us true. False, true gives us true. And both being false is false. Okay. So that's what it is. Okay. Now there's a lot of ways you can do this one. 1 second. Okay. Let's go ahead. Okay, so the first baseline way we can do this is that we can just simply write out this truth table like this, right? Because there's 2 values for A, true or false, 2 values for B, true or false. And so that's a total of 4 combinations. And we can just simply go through all 4 of those combinations. That is kind of the, oh gosh, what am I doing on the test? Let me think about this. Oh, and kind of just brute force approach. So if A equals true and B equals true, return false, right? And then let me just copy this to speed this up. Boom, 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 right? We have 4 possibilities. If A is true and B is false, right? If one of them is true, then return true. Otherwise, return false. Right? If A is false and B is true, one of them is true, so return true. And then if both of them are false, then return false. Right? Not too scary, right? And that's a correct answer. This gives you 100% of the points. No tricks there. What we're saying, though, is that there are shorter ways to do this. Right? So you don't want to do or necessarily here. Or could give you a false positive. Okay. What we can look at, though, is you can view it in a kind of a different way rather than true and false. When do we return false? When they're different. If they're the same, return true. If they're different, so if they're the same, return false. If they're different, return true. Make sense? Right? That's the second way to look at this. Yep, that's exactly what I'm about to do here. That is exactly what I'm about to do. So we can shorten this down to like 4 lines, I think, maybe something short. My plan is to get it much further, much less than that. So what we're going to do is we can say, okay, if they're the same, right? What was I saying? If they're the same, that's when it's going to be false. If true and true, false. And if false and false, false. But if they're different, true and false, false and true, return true. So if A equals B, return false. Right? If they're the same, return false. Otherwise, return. I'm not sure what's going on there that is annoying it. Okay. Otherwise, return true. Go. And this works. It gets it down to a single if else statement. But when we're doing a Boolean like this, if A equals B, it's actually rather silly to once you learn about it, it's like, wait, why are we doing this extra step of returning true or false and evaluating the expression? Let's go ahead and flip this around. right? If they're the same, return true. Sorry, if they're the same, return false. We can flip that around. If they're the same, not equal, sorry, if they're different, return true. And if it's the same, return false. Right? See how I just kind of flipped it? Okay. And now, if I'm evaluating this to true, then I return true. And if it evaluates to false, it returns false. And at the very end, we could just actually skip a step entirely and do the following and get a one-line answer. And why is that one worth on the exam so many points as any of the others? Because it's a logic problem, and logic can be hard sometimes. But again, doing it the longer way works. All right, so I think this is going to be our last problem for the day. Sum of threes. Actually, let's see. No, yeah. Let's go ahead and do it. And if I have to redo it next time, just because we're out of time, I'll go ahead and do this one. Sum of threes. Okay. Given a list that contains many lists of integers, return the sum of all the numbers that are multiples of 3. Half credit is given if those answers work on a list of integers. Right? So here is our examples. Right? Which is that we've got all the numbers from 1 to 10 added together. Sorry, all the numbers from 1 to 10. And we add together all the numbers, right, that are divisible by 3. 3, 6, and 9. 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 plus 9 is 18. Boom. Okay. Notice that it is not just, it's not a list, as I mentioned, it's a list of lists. Right? It just happens to be a list that has one list in it. Now, let's go ahead and look at this one. 10, 20, 5. So 10, the first list has 10 and 20. The second list has 5 in it. And the third list has 20, 15, 1, 1, 1. So there's only 15 in it. So the sum of all the numbers divisible by 3, right? That's what we're adding up. The numbers divisible by 3 is 15. Then we've got 10, 20, 51 in list 1. Then we've got 10, 20, and 30 in list 2. Right? If this was 10, 21, let's go ahead and actually put the 21 over here. Then this one would be 51 because we'd have 2 separate numbers adding up here. Okay. So how does this work? Same way we do it running sum for everything else we've been doing. We have a total is equal to 0. And here, because we're just adding things up, we're not doing an average or anything funky like that, we're just going to return the total. So we have to do a running sum. Now, if it was a list, just a single list with only numbers in it, right? The way you do it, and this is what you would do and give you half credit, is you'd say for num in numbers is equal to, total plus equals num. But that doesn't make for a very interesting problem. But that's half credit because sometimes occasionally students misread that, and I don't like to penalize them too harshly. All right, next thing. So let's go ahead and do this for a list of lists. Okay, wow, that's time's moving slower than I thought. Okay. So for list in numbers, and this might be a better thing to rename list of numbers. You can rename my variables. I don't care. So in fact, you can do it very harmlessly by saying something like list of numbers, or a list of lists of numbers, so whatever. Well, the point being is that you can name your variables, rename my variables however you need to. For a list in numbers. So now for each of the lists, so this says for each list in this list of numbers, then we need to go through each list individually. For num in list, total, sorry, if, and this is what I forgot to add, right? It's only if we're not doing a running sum of all the numbers. I forgot to add that for the other part. If num divisible by 3 equals 0. So if the number, so if num mod 3 is equal to 0, in other words, if the number is divisible by 3, total plus equals num. Boom. That's it. It's a bit of an indented, it's, you know, not fun to look at super indented, but I, generally speaking, like none of my questions will ever really require more than a nested for loop like that. I find that if you're going multiple nested for loops, then something's typically gone wrong and there's probably a better way to address the problem. All right, so that's, I think, a good stopping point. When on the next lesson, we will definitely go over these harder problems. The Monte Carlo especially, but again, you're going to have a choice of which problem you want to try on the final. There's going to be multiple problems. It's going to resemble something like this. And it's going to cover a lot of the topics that we've done in class. There will probably be a turtle question, but I'm going to try to make it, you know, something like what you had on the exam where you draw a turtle. Well, sorry, draw what the turtle's doing. All right, so class is dismissed. I will upload this as soon as possible. I will go ahead and, yes, I should probably post this on Canvas. Give me a sec to do stop.